Ready to call the meeting to order. But first, we'll have public forum. Is there anybody here for public forum? Hearing none, we'll declare that the quorum is established and all members are present. And we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance, and I see a flag over there.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
See, they put the torture seats in the back.
Board members, you have the consent agenda in front of you, and with an opportunity to have read it, I'm open to a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Moved by Mandy,
Come on, guys.
seconded by Terry. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carried. The consent agenda is adopted.
Mr. Martinson, can I recognize one resignation that was part
Yes,
of that?
yes, absolutely.
I'd like to recognize Deb Steiger for her commitment to our district as an educational assistant at the high school. We wish her the very best in retirement and her dedication to the New London School District. As well, the board recognized through the consent agenda 2 hires of bus drivers, Terry Cranky and Sheila Rue. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Bleck, I'll turn it to you for the calendar.
So it's a busy time of year. Thank you, board members, for your work this evening prior to the regular February meeting. Please note that we'll have several meetings coming up. Again, the 27th of February will be our regular meeting, and then right into the month of March with our regular board meeting scheduled for the 6th, and then moving on, on the 13th, and then our special meeting on the 27th. You will note that there are several committee meetings scheduled within. We communicate well, reminding one another of the various instructional and compensation and facilities meetings that are up. We're into some very deep conversations as we're working through each of those, but if we're looking for a break, I'd encourage everyone to take in our annual Pops concert on March 3rd and any of our other great events that are going on throughout the district. Are there any questions on the upcoming meeting schedule?
That Pops concert, the 11th or the 3rd?
The 11th.
The 11th.
The 11th.
Yeah, March 11th.
Just one more, policy committee is meeting on the 23rd. It didn't make our calendar yet.
Correct.
For anybody
On March,
interested.
yeah, March 23rd. Also, just call special attention to the special board meeting on the 6th. And can you tell us about that stuff?
I don't.
That's the.
Yes, absolutely, yes, thank you
Right.
for
Yeah.
that. Yes, so Mr. Knightsky from CISA 6 will be on campus on the 6th, and that'll be the day where we're going through our strategic plan of our one-page core area objectives that have been established for the board to consider and know as we continue to move through that process. That start time will be at 5 o'clock on that Monday, and we anticipate an hour and a half with Mr. Knightsky as he unrolls our strategic plan that we'll be sharing with our school community, and then the process of gathering community feedback and referenced feedback for our strategic directions that we'll be looking at.
Okay, we'll move to the monthly celebrations.
Celebrations, again, recognizing our students for their accomplishments as their bulldogs of character and all things New London within. Congratulations to all of our elementary, middle, and high school students and the staff that supported their nominations to be within this month's recognitions.
Now, your
Yep.
director's report.
Okay, thank you. In the February District Administrator's Report, this is typically the time of the year that we're able to get out and have our years of service recognition with our various buildings and recognize the staff involved for their commitments. We recognize staff in a 10-year increment and their support to our district, starting at 10 years through 45 years of service. Congratulations to all of our years of service recognition Specifically, I'd like to recognize Mr. Ken Carew. I don't think I've worked with anyone 45 years of working for a district. Ken is one of our bus drivers and does an outstanding job. And congratulations to all of our years of service recognition. They've also recognized at the beginning of the year within the full school community before the start of the year. Our annual, B212 February recognition recognizes the month of February, and specifically our school counselors, and Candy Martin, who oversees our counseling program within. You know, this at our last compensation committee, we had counselors present there, then shared their story with our committee. This first full week of February is recognized as National School Counselors Week. We appreciate their efforts to work with all students and families and support resources to help our students and create opportunities, specifically recognizing our counselors Lisa Brovold, Jen Tate, Sarah Poggle, Cassidy Flanders, Riley Schusler, Teresa Reynoso Dorn, and Gretchen Stassi. Congratulations. And then this week is the School Bus Driver Appreciation Week in the state of Wisconsin. Tomorrow we'll be down at our transportation office recognizing our years of service and tag-teaming, if you will, the hard efforts of our transportation drivers. Our students start and finish the day on our transportation routes. Very important job, and we're very fortunate to have a great transportation office and drivers that support us throughout the entire year and after hours as well, and on weekends with trips and transportation needs. So congratulations and thank you to all. Any questions from my report? And thank you.
It's 45 years is a long time to drive a bus. That's an amazing accomplishment there, buddy. Ken. All right. Any further questions of Scott? Scott, maybe you can facilitate us coming up with a workshop date
Sure.
for follow-up on this.
Absolutely. So one suggestion would be to look at another pre-meeting, if that would be a consensus for engagement conversations. Does that fit the intention of the board?
How long are we with Ted on the 6th?
Said an hour,
Yeah,
It's an
and a
yeah,
half.
hour, I
hour and a
think.
half is what he was anticipating within that.
I mean, we're starting at 5. I was just thinking, would that be a good way to get the juices flowing and then just continue?
Sure.
It's only an hour and a half. Sometimes we're here at 3 and 4. I mean, just my idea. Like, maybe he'd be a good
Catalyst
launch.
to have some conversation on
that's
engagement.
just a suggestion.
It's a good suggestion.
We have like 4 out of the next 5 Mondays we have meetings. And since it starts at 5, it's just maybe.
I think that's a great idea.
Okay. So we would conclude then after that presentation then with some engagement work and maybe take some of the items that came
I
from
mean, I
that.
just thought maybe that's a nice continuation
Sure.
of the concept.
So what time will we start?
That starts at
At
5.
five.
Okay,
That starts
so
at
the
5 on
time's not gonna
6th.
stay, but, okay.
So it'll maybe extend that a little bit longer.
Sure.
But we can deal with this.
Well, and that's just my suggestion, but
It's,
Maybe just as
I agree.
one targeted takeaway, if you're able to give me the targeted areas that you're thinking of in advance, and I could bring those forward, we'll have those out well in advance of that. That may be one of the starting points to look at, okay, now, where do we take this next information to help improve our support engagement? Okay, thanks, Chris.
okay.
so was that a
Next is Joe Markert's report for business services.
Is there a podium tonight?
And that is
Sure.
the podium, there we go.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, so 3 topics tonight. The first one is a thank you to Scheid Construction for a donation to the school lunch fund. We do have a school lunch fund that people can apply for to have funds go towards their student lunch account. There's a process that each building has. They can fill out a paperwork for that, but again, just a thank you for that donation. We had 2 recent committee meetings. One was total compensation, where a lot of the meeting was spent on talking about CPI. CPI for the next budget year is 8.01%. So the committee started brainstorming some ideas. We're going to meet again in March to talk and continue to update the board on that as well. Also, we had a facilities committee meeting, which you're going to hear a lot about tonight because we're at Sugar Bush Elementary, so that's going to be a little bit later on in the agenda. Update also on tennis court bids that were received. We talked about them at the committee level and had a good discussion about it. But as of right now, we're gonna wait and see how the state budget comes forward to the district to continue to update the full board on what the next steps might be. Were there any other topics you wanted me to touch on from either the total compensation committee update or the facilities committee update?
Joe, do you have any idea when you may see a state budget?
Well, ironically, we were down at the city last week, and they were talking about later in the spring, is what I heard. Is that what
Governor
you heard as
Evers will
well?
release his rendition of the budget tomorrow, or on the 15th on Wednesday. And then I'm certain the Republican Party will follow shortly after with that. And then the discussions, I know there's several public hearings already established throughout the state of Wisconsin. I know they'll go through that process in advance of really, putting the pencil to the paper. So I would anticipate that
So fall.
late spring, so fall, yeah. I sure hope so. I think I've heard feedback on both sides of the ledger that they understand and know the importance of this budget more than ever. So I would hope that it would be part of our June discussion and having a direction set.
Yeah, it's a little difficult to sit on $7 billion of surplus and say, forget it. But historically, they usually haven't gotten out till later in the summer.
I
By
would
the
say
time they
that
resolve all their back
usually
and
by
forth.
June, we have a really good idea of what's going to
Okay.
happen. And then there's always some finer things that we find out after the fact. But usually by June, because July 1st is the equalization aid estimate. They want to make sure that
Okay.
information is as close as possible for school boards.
Sounds like they need the 4 days of darkness isolation to decide on the money.
No food, no water.
No food.
We'll get to it. Thank you, Joe.
Thanks, Mr. Marquardt. And we now have pupil services, Mrs. Martin.
I have 3 things on my agenda today. First of all is a celebration. Last Friday we had Stuart Stotts in the district. This is part of our 4K outreach. We do a couple events like that throughout the year. It was well attended. I think we did a head count that there was 70 folks that showed up that morning to hang out with Stuart, and their families were along as well. Grandparents were there, and kudos to the Catalyst Academy students. They came over and helped us set up. They had us set up over 100 chairs and then helped us clean up and tear down the event. So that was a nice leadership opportunity for them as well. Next event coming up like that, similar, is Literacy Roundup, and that's going to be coming up on Friday, March 3rd. And a similar format, we're at the Washington Center, and we're targeting the 4K students and their families, and that's also a nice event for us to garner some of that 4K registration that has been put off, and I know Danielle's going to talk more about that, so I'll let her highlight that. My last item, we received almost $1,000 donation from the Knights of Columbus to the special ed program, and they do that every year. That is part of their Tootsie Roll annual fundraiser, and they take that money and they give it back to the School District of New London and earmark it into the special ed budget. So in my board report, you can see there is a picture of Jim Russell from the local Knights of Columbus Council 1797, and he was able to bring us that check again as well. So thank you to the Knights of Columbus.
Just a quick question. There was a couple character assemblies on February 1st with inspirational speaker Terrence Talley. Any feedback on how that went as far as helpfulness to the staff there and the students?
I did not garner a lot of feedback from that. I don't know if any of the other folks.
The
got
middle
any
school,
more
I know the
information
middle
on
school
that.
had during the day, the high school too, I think.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Thank you. All right, next we have Teaching and Learning Services. Mrs. Seaver.
Okay. As Candy shared, 4K registration is open, and this is the biggest time that I need everyone in the community to reach out to our families. The only information we have is families who have current students in our district and the census, and especially since New London no longer has a birthing center, We need to make sure that anybody who lives in our area knows how to get their kids into the 4K program. So we have sent out pamphlets and information, but we've had an uptick in phone calls for interested families knowing how to navigate and get enrolled. But as we look at our open enrollment, once they start with us, they tend to stay. We just need to make sure that we get those families that are there. So if in your community organizations, your churches, anything else that you have connections to young families, we have postings and posters all over, but we'll help families get those things put together to get our youngest learners enrolled. With that, Candy also helped by getting those promotional little bulldogs to get them integrated to our families with a little stuffy. And we have a couple other events on our posters that, like a visitation day, so they can get used to the buildings and meet some of their teachers, see some of those things when they're doing that. So please continue to promote that. Also just keeping you in the loop, our state assessment windows are opening, so a lot more publications to families, letting them know that state assessments are starting. So that's the Forward, that's the DLM, that's the ACT. Each building and each kind of grade band has their own requirements. So talking to your friends and neighbors, it really depends on which building they're in to know how that schedule rolls out. So information is there. If they do have questions, they can reach out to me or to their building administrators. Summer school is going pretty well with us starting to get things planned. A few shifts in the programming based on feedback. We have 2 sessions of 3 weeks each. The first session in June really focused on that remediation. However, having some of the overflow in our sports and skills camps. So last year's model of having more academics in the morning and then that skills in the afternoon was well received by our families. They felt great about dropping kids off and leaving them all day rather than having to try to get back and forth with rides. Transportation will not be in the June session though. The full traditional session for our elementary will be in that July 10th through the 27th. We do have an active posting on weekend for substitute teachers, which I think is a great opportunity for new grads and also for us to kind of have the pool of candidates that might also fill openings in the fall. So again, encourage anybody that you know who's in education to apply to either be a teacher or to help us with our program, and then watch for those dates as you're planning your summer care for your other children and neighbors and making sure that we can meet the needs of our families. February 20th, we have professional development coming up. I think families are a little bit thrown off this year having both a Friday and a Monday. So we have a little bit of a change in schedule. So just reminding you that the reason why we do not have school on the 20th President's Day is for us to have that professional development where our teams will be working together on mid-year goals. Also, it's a big month for open enrollment. So open enrollment window is the same for our partner with Rural Virtual Academy. So any family who would like to continue or start to go virtual needs to go to the bottom right-hand corner of our landing page on our website to request interest in holding a spot in RVA. Again, this is that open enrollment window when our own students enroll into that program. Currently, we have 18 students who are still active in that program, and it's going very, very well. But again, another way to keep our families from looking elsewhere, knowing that we have everything available in-house. And then finally, you'll hear a little bit more about this, but our instructional committee met on January 25th. That entire meeting was focused on a request for appeal related to a review of instructional materials in the library. Any questions? Because I know I threw a lot at you.
So our second Friday count is up by 4 from the fall, right? Total.
That is correct. That is correct. So the second Friday count in the month of January, when the additions and deletions from open enrollment in and out, the number used with the state back in September 22nd, we were at 2,225, and the January 13th count was 2,229. So.
It's a positive direction. I like it. Any other questions?
Just a question. Joe, I believe the state uses a 3-year running average for enrollment, is that right?
Yes.
Do they use the spring or the fall?
They use the fall. This count is the half of the equalization aid. So
Okay.
you take your average between your September count and your January count, and that's how they determine your average membership for equalization aid next year.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. So, vouchers and receipts, Mr. Markle.
I had 3 vouchers to highlight for the month. One was for WEA, that's for our retiree 403B contributions. The Millbach Construction is for middle school work, and Somerville is for work here at Sugar Bush. You can note our biggest receipts of the month, or the period, were for taxes. This is the time that, people are paying taxes in December and January, so those deposits then come from the municipalities to the district. Are there any questions?
Hearing none, we're open to a motion to approve expenditures in the amount of $1,645,268.81 as per the list of February 9th, 2023.
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Mark. Roll call vote, please.
Katie Benton,
Yes.
Mark Grossman,
Yes.
John Heidemann.
Yes.
Holly Schweitzer.
Yes.
Terry Wagner,
Yes.
Mandy Wills,
Yes.
Chris Martenson.
Yes. We will record receipts from the receipt register for February 9th, 2023 in the amount of $4,448,806.18. Anything else to add?
No, sir.
Okay. We will move the agenda then. There is no unfinished business, so we will move to new business. Review and potential approval of the spending of ESSER Fund 3 use. Mr. Black and Mr. Markler.
The board members, as discussed at our previous special meeting, we talked about the potential usage of ESSER funds to support the purchase of a pole vault pit, to support our high school track and field team, and then as well as a potential purchase of folding chairs to support events and activities within the district. The pole vault pit had the not to exceed $24,000, and the folding chairs for $500, not to exceed $25,000. Is there any further questions outside of our last discussion? Nothing has changed.
Well, before we open discussion, I'll entertain a motion to adopt it, and then we can have the discussion as following the motion.
I'll make the motion to adopt.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Sounds like everybody's on the same page with this. We'll move it to vote. Do we need a roll call
You
vote
do.
for this? Okay.
Mark Grossman,
Yes.
John Heidemann.
Yes.
Holly Schweitzer,
Yes.
Terry Wagner,
Yes.
Mandy Wills,
Yes.
Katie Benton,
Yes.
Chris Martenson.
Yes. Okay, the next item on the agenda is review and potential approval of findings of instructional committee for reconsideration of school library resources. I'm first gonna call on Mark. He has a request to place a motion out to table this. I'll call on you if you wanna make that motion.
Sure. Yep. Do you want me to give an explanation why I'm doing that, or you just want me
First
to make
make
a
the
motion?
motion and then we'll.
Okay, I make a motion that we table this item until after our next instructional committee meeting, which is scheduled for, I think, March 6th.
Is there
I'll
a
second
second? Second
I'll
by
second.
Terry. So what we'll discuss now is whether to table and reasons to table or not to table. And so any board members that wish to speak on that. Mark, you could
Sure.
start by explaining your,
So-
since it was your request to.
All right, thank you. The reason that I made the motion is that after we had our meeting and reviewed the book, I had an opportunity to get some more information from Katie Kovaleski, who was at the instructional meeting. And it was information that I think it would have had, it could have had an influence on the decision that was made, or individual decisions that was made. And it had to do with the manner at which items are selected, and she gave me some information on that. It also had to do with the fact that the books are the books are not just sitting there and the kids can just go grab them. They're either the library aides or the teacher or the librarian is typically assisting the younger kids on choosing books. All right, so that was one thing we really didn't spend a lot of time on. The other aspect of this, the reason I wanted to table it is that this was the first time that we've been involved in doing something like this since I've been on the board, which now is 5+ years. And there were some procedural things that we didn't follow that we should have, such as reading through our policy that we have in place. And for the rest of the board members who got the information packet that in your board packet, that we got that same information, but we didn't get it until the day of the committee. We walked in and we were given a packet of information. And so we didn't have time to read through any of that in advance. And then on top of that, we were under a time crunch of an hour. And so we just didn't review some of the information that I think could have made a difference. I'm not saying it would have, but it could have. And I just think in order to do this right and set a precedence of doing it right, that we should revisit it. The outcome might be the same, but I think it's in following the rules of order and so forth. I would feel better if we did a do-over, for lack of a better term.
Can I speak freely?
Yes.
I guess, Mark, I'm a little confused because, you're talking about, the way that the books are checked out. And in our own media document that, we went over as in our committee, it says all students, regardless of age, may check out any and all books available.
Right.
And in that meeting, you yourself said that you were not comfortable with your grandchild reading a book. I mean, I'm going to
bring this back around because right now, we got to deal with the motion to postpone. If that motion fails, then it's time to get into the substance.
Well, but
back
this
and forth.
could affect a decision on if we postpone, in my opinion.
If it does, then we're going to go.
Because
Go ahead.
I'm seeing both sides and I
Right.
don't know where I'm at because I was a part of this and I guess I want to revisit
Well, go ahead.
because I think
Let's-
it's related to tabling.
yeah,
Okay,
let's-
if
let's
it's
let-
related to
let Holly,
then
go ahead.
let's go.
So you were saying,
Sorry.
I really don't know. I mean, I actually reached out to Scott and I said I've read through the material and a couple different times and because he had reached out to me asking if, we could, bring it back to committee and I didn't think it would change my mind just going through stuff. So that's just my
I
opinion.
guess where I'm coming from is, if the committee as a whole still wants to move forward, then we should move forward. If not, then we should. So
I'm kind of
reading-
like,
So go
Can we-
ahead.
I just wanna weigh in,
Just
'cause
for
I was-
everybody's sake, the committee is, Mark is the chair, Katie and Holly are members of the committee.
I was reading over all of our comments and I don't know that my sentiments would change. I would like to know, I guess, a little more about the procedure, but I mean, I was more open to the one book even than you were, Mark, and you guys both had really good arguments and I was like, okay, I'm under the impression I can change my mind on this because I was on the fence on the ghost one. Where I'm hung up is the graphic nature of the I mean, it's the graphics. I mean, a picture is worth 1,000 words. But if we didn't go about it the right way, then I'm a little like, Because I don't think anybody wants to start censoring, because then you have them on this side, and then you have to,
You
but
get very specific.
it's a very slippery slope, and one of my good friends from high school is an elementary librarian in San Antonio, so I just called her, and I was like, how do you guys go about this? And not that we need to do this in Texas, but she did say, like, you know how it says suggested, it says school library review, this title, suggested audience grades 3 and 4. Which is what our committee had come to the conclusion of. So if we have a way to do a win-win,
What page are you on?
I'm on 73. And if it says under review, school library general review this exact title and the suggested audience is grade 3 and above. And that is the assessment our committee came to, was grades 3 and above. So we had,
So,
so we had kind of come to the, I feel like it's a little of a win-win on the decision we had come to, because we're not censoring a book. We're making it so 6-year-olds can't check out a book with dead bodies. And I feel like we spend so much time on mental health and how much, I mean, you even said 40% of our second graders are suffering from anxiety. Does a picture of these people hanging from a bridge help anxiety? Like,
But may I speak on that? What concerned me, I sat in on that meeting, and before you even looked at material, you should have been reviewing the policy and the guidelines.
and I think that's what Mark is saying.
And they
to go
weren't.
back to.
They were not reviewed. If you look at page 55, there is a specific guideline procedure, and I don't think it was particularly followed. You know, there was, if we're going to prevent children from seeing something, it is in fact censorship. We should have had an attorney's review of this before we made that decision. If you go back to page 51, I want to talk about the pictures. Go to item 8. Materials are to be judged as a whole, taking into account the author's, producer's intent, rather than focusing on single words, phrases, pictures of incidents taken out of context. When I read your evaluations, it was all about this picture, I didn't like that. This phrase, I didn't like that. And I'm not attacking any of you, but that's exactly what you're not supposed to do. You have to view this as a genre. And it happens to be probably our most popular genre.
There, in my opinion, has to be alternatives out there. And like I said
But,
in the meeting,
well-
like I said in the meeting though, Terry, we have discussed mental health in our schools numerous times.
But that's no
And-
excuse for censorship.
Well,
Kelly has the floor.
where this mom is concerned, and as a mom, kids, I mean, when you read this, I don't know how I would ever explain that to my child.
But you have a solution. You can, now let me finish. You have every right to go to the librarian and say, I don't want my children reading this genre or this book.
The damage
But
is
you
already
don't
done, though,
have-
Terry. If I have a third grader or a second grader that comes home that can read, or a third grader, and they say,
But
"Mom,
Holly, what you're saying is, I don't want any child to read this book. And yes,
it's
you
not."
are.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's not
It says 3 and
appropriate.
above.
But
The book
if
itself.
I have a second grader, and these are second grade level readings, if I have a second grader, you have no right to tell me I can't let my child
Okay.
can't check out that book.
Gavel thing,
It is not-
we're getting
So-
away
getting
from
off
some of our
the
core
subject.
norms now. I think we need to focus in that everybody has the right to their opinion on this. Everybody has had the packet for quite a while, so let's not cut the other person down. Let's just, if you make, right now, the motion on the floor is whether we should table and look at it again. Let's
and
keep it to
again,
that
I'm
and
gonna
not-
repeat, it's not because I disagree with the decision. It's a procedural thing.
Okay,
And
that's
it's
where I'm hung
making
up on.
sure that we followed protocol, we followed procedure. And there's some other things to take into consideration that I don't think it's appropriate for us to discuss at this time. I mean, I just looked at the way the meeting went and the way the information was shared and the way that we came to the conclusion. And I felt like we missed some things. Now, if just think about it this way. What if we had a 2-to-1 vote and there was a definite disagreement, between the 2 and the 1, and some new information came out that we didn't talk about, that might have changed somebody's vote. Okay, that's and I don't want to run the risk of cheating somebody of that opportunity.
Well, let's not.
So anyways,
let's not
that's why again
overthink it
it's
at this-
it's a procedural thing, and you know what I mean. If we say no to it, I tried.
Do you feel like, what Terry just said, that based on our policy, like, would it be expensive to have the attorney review it and make sure we're doing things right?
I think that's a conversation to take at committee level.
Okay.
Can I interject?
Sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. So I'm reviewing the Board of Education appeal procedures and following through on the steps that were included from the initial request from the parent, okay, to the building principal and our library media specialist that took the initiative to address that, and with a potential recommendation very similar to what's in front of the board right now as it states. And then with the disapproval of that from the parent, and then moving on to the review committee, which included Director of Teaching and Learning, our elementary principal, myself as an observer, the high school librarian as an observer, a classroom teacher, a parent, and who am I missing, Danielle? Was there one more people on there? So, long story short, within that process, we went through the same similar information in what you did and came to a conclusion that the findings are that there should be no restrictions. Okay, that we're saying that it should just go forward as is. The parent was not satisfied with that and appealed it back to the board to bring it to the instructional committee to go forward within that. So within the presentation of materials, all materials, this policy has been in front of this board, I think this is the 4th time, okay, that this has been in front to understand and know and process through. And if at our instructional meeting you felt that this policy should have been reviewed verbatim again, okay, absolutely, for better understanding within that part of it. All of the resources which were part of the decision-making at the committee level were part of this as well. Mark, you mentioned feedback from Mrs. Kowaleski and her role as the librarian, and some standards which are part of library dynamics within. That was maybe the one piece that wasn't shared verbally, but very much part of our packet. So procedurally wise, outside of the legal reference, which at this point, this is not an instructional book. This is a free read book. This is our choice book of having in a library. I didn't see it appropriate reaching for that opinion at this stage of the process. It's not a curricular adjustment to curriculum. This is a choice book that individual has free will at the current time to access or not. So that was the reason for that, within that. But if there is desire to go back and hear more feedback from other aspects of our processing, that will be the instructional committee's response.
Are you saying, so we followed the procedure thus far? Don't we have restrictions already on books that, like, say, if I wanted to check to get a movie, I can't get a rated R one? Is there, like, we have recommendations for different levels. Is it considered censorship because it's all the elementary library and we're only doing 3rd and 4th grade availability? Like, where is the definition of censorship?
So, I don't know if I can answer that completely, Katie. At the middle school, intermediate middle school level, we have young adult readers, okay, where we have 2 different levels of free read books, and where we wouldn't allow a 5th or 6th grader to take that young adult
So we
section.
do already do that.
We do that at the middle school, but at the elementary level,
You do it
it's-
at the intermediate middle school. The intermediate is prevented from reading some of the books in the middle
Correct.
school.
Well, I'm gonna try to bring it back.
But in elementary, it is not.
Let me ask this question, isn't
the way you're describing this, that would be censorship.
It's, do you want to take that?
Wait a minute.
Well,
We're
no,
getting-
it's a very honest question. I mean, because I'm trying to get at the essence of what we're talking about. I'm not on that committee. I'm just trying to understand where we're going with this, because
It gets
saying
to a
that
point
this,
of,
when the recommendation that comes on it is grade 3 and above, and we're doing it in grade 2,
Or 1 or K.
or 1 or K, I mean, I just don't understand what we're fighting about here. Why don't we follow the recommendation? And but this is,
I'm gonna bring it
seems
back
like
to
a
the
large waste of
simple
time for me.
motion of, should we table? We've heard reasons to table, we've heard some reasons not to table. Are we ready to vote about that? Because if we're gonna table it, we can move on. If we're not gonna table it, we can then get into the substance of whether it should be done or not. Are we ready? Any other comments on tabling? So Mark has made a motion to table. All those in favor of tabling, maybe we should do this by voice. Just, I have a sense that there is probably some
Yeah, I'll
division on
request a
that.
roll call vote, make it easy on you.
Okay.
John Heidemann.
no.
Holly Schweitzer.
No.
Terry Wagner.
yes,
Mandy Wills.
Yes.
Katie Batten.
No.
Mark Grossman.
Yes,
Chris.
No. So now the subject before us is, the recommendation from the committee is that we, make the book not available to under third grade. Make the 2 books available to not under third grade. Just to get the discussion going on that, can we have a motion on that?
I'll make the motion.
You, Mandy makes a motion.
I'll second it.
Holly is seconded, so now, the substance of the agenda item is open for discussion.
So can I just bounce off of what John's saying, because I'm not a part of this committee either, so I'm just trying to piece everything together. If the recommendation is grades 3 and up, why are we giving it to under 3, grade 3?
So currently at the elementary, all the books in the elementary library are, say if you will, open to all students in the elementary. Now the process for checking out books for our littlest learners, there is a process. There's somebody helping them. Well, maybe this isn't a good book for you, so on and so forth. So there is a oversight process, but if a student does have a strong interest and the parent said, yeah, that's okay, that's appropriate, well then that child would have access to it.
Yep.
And I still think we could do that, because if you know, like, your child's a reluctant reader,
Yeah.
that was one reason I was okay with our decision, because I had a reluctant reader. And if you really feel like this had helped your child, we had agreed the parents could say they can check out this
Yeah.
series.
And
I feel like it's a win-win in a
And
way.
it really is, because I'm with you. My son is a reluctant reader, and he brings home some of what he brings home to read. I just shake my head like, that's not even a book. You're reading comic books right now. But he's reading. In my opinion, he's reading, and it's keeping him interested. So I'm really on the fence with this one. I find us borderlining, trying to micromanage something that we should not be. If it was being taught in an open class, yes, I would have an issue with that. But we're talking about a personal preference for a child, and who am I to say that that family can't check out a book that they don't,
And we're
that
saying
they
you
find is
still
okay.
could, and we're saying you could do
but,
that.
but
like-
we have turned it around. We have now put the burden on the people
Yes.
who want the book to be free versus saying, we already have a system that any parent can say, I don't want my child to read these books or this genre. Now we're saying, no, we don't want that system anymore. We're going to say, none of you can read this unless you decide to opt in.
Chris.
Okay, can I?
I have a, unless I missed something in this whole thing, do we know what grades this parent's kids are in?
Second.
Second.
Second?
7. Yeah,
Was
there was,
it-
and
was it
she
in
didn't
there?
know they had them, according to the, like, until they brought it home.
Okay, because now Mandy made a really good point, and she's looking at the books that her son's bringing home, and that's really your first line of defense.
Yeah.
We have, there are processes in place. It states right here under our media center guideline, it says for New London Elementary School libraries, book selection is student driven. However, library aides and teachers will assist in selection process. All students, regardless of age, may check out any or all books available. The next step in that process, though, is when they bring that book home and the parents go through their book, their bag, and they see this book and they say, this isn't something you should be reading. And I'll go back to my reference in our meeting about our son, is
Yeah.
that's what we would do. And it's like, no, you're not gonna read this book because you're not gonna sleep tonight. And so he doesn't get it. He takes it back to the library, and they turn it in. And so ultimately, my feeling is it's the parents' decision because they're bringing that book home. It's not something that's required for instruction in their classroom. It is something that they walk into this room and they go around and they say, I want to take this book home and read it. And then the parents can say, nope, we don't agree with it. And then I agree with also what you said, that we shouldn't be making that decision for other parents who are okay with it.
Yeah.
And I can
That's all.
understand that, how, we
Could
talk
I ask
about.
quick?
Oh,
So kind of related to all this, and I'm trying to understand this, how the system currently works. So are we being proactive or reactive? So do the parents ahead of time have a system where they can say, okay, I don't want my kid exposed to this, or this?
Yes,
like no Harry
there's
Potter.
a-
So
Yes, they do.
there is a
Yeah.
system in place.
There-
Yeah.
Yeah, they can.
Okay.
They can see, I believe, all the content of the library.
So in September, coming out of last year, actually, we worked all summer, and in September, I presented to the board the handout that many are reading off of. That took our library media specialist, that took our principals, that went through multiple different teams to get that together so that parents would have more information. Then after that first presentation, I think Holly also said she was still having issue finding it on the website. We put it in a new website location. Then we said there was too many clicks, so we added a new landing page. There's now a whole library landing page that gives you to the Destiny Resource Center. We've also asked all of our principals to add how to use the library to their newsletters to make sure that our parents and families know that. We sent this sheet out to all parents. At our instructional committee, unrelated to our guides, we also said that maybe, starting in second grade, we start sending out a list of all of the genres that are available, so parents know what types of genres are. Because
Right.
I think one thing that swayed us through this conversation was the fact that we're not talking about a specific book necessarily. We are talking about two specific books in the genre called paranormal activity nonfiction. So it is ghost stories, death, that is the genre.
but
That's-
ghost
However,
so
back
my
to what
question
Holly's
isn't
saying is-
quite there.
Yeah.
Mine is, so what happened? This parent obviously didn't want their kid reading this type of stuff. Did they not?
So
Did they not say anything ahead of time?
Well, no, because it's
Or how
paranormal,
did it-
which is a huge.
Yeah, so what happened was this, if you look through the documents, this parent was upset that next day they walked into the building, they came into the principal and the classroom teacher, said, I don't want this book to my student, and I wanna block them from that entire genre. The library aide and principal said, whole genre, this is kind of a related genre, so they blocked them from paranormal, ghost stories, nonfiction paranormal. I think because one of them was prisons, they also blocked them from prisons that, anything that was related to that. They went through that process and blocked them for that student and everyone in that family.
So
And then they
previous to this,
also, at that meeting, said that they would take those two books and put them on hold to grades 3 and 4 until they had time to go through that. And at that point, the parent said that's not enough, they want them out of the library.
so the parent could have said something ahead of time that no, I don't want my kid exposed to
Yeah.
this.
Correct.
Didn't, and
But
then after the fact
She
this
only
came
has a
up.
problem
Or
with these two books.
It doesn't sound like she had opposition to the whole genre.
Right, it's just
She
these
just
two books.
was shocked at the fact that one book came home that she didn't think should be in that age group.
If you read her request and you read what the library board said the reason they denied it was not because this seemed to focus on just 2 books. This seemed to be focusing on the entire genre. That is a concern because we do have a system, John, for anybody to opt out. They can leave, they can say, I don't want my children reading this. And if I had a child who, that's a personal decision for you and your family. But to say that, well, if other kids want it, their parents are going to have to say they can read it. We're now saying, no, nobody can read it unless they opt in. And that's not how this has been developed.
Well, no, but that age appropriate.
Well, my concerns on this whole process have been, we really haven't followed our board policy. I was really upset when we started that meeting of the committee. That committee could have started with board policy and library guidelines.
Well, don't know everybody has access to those.
You should have started it before you looked at the books. We moved through, here's what the appeals did, and oh, by the way, here are the books. We didn't read even our own processes for this. It also, may I finish, please, Chris?
I'm just asking.
So we're not adhering to our own guidance. We've given very little time to this for any public input that I'm aware of. I mean, the decision came down a week ago, a little over a week ago. Our first real public notification of this has been in this agenda. Our committee minutes aren't put out on the board for the public to see. I'm really concerned we're not following the guidance of the people we hire who are trained to do this. That really concerns me. These are the people who have the specialty. None of us as board members is that familiar with library laws, the guidance of it, or the selection of materials. And we're not following even our library guides, fundamental principles of intellectual freedom. We are starting to say, you're not free to see this unless your parent says you can. And John, to your point at intermediate and middle school, the line is being drawn at what would be considered a age-wise shift in sexuality, for lack of well, not sexuality,
No,
but young romance, is it, or
No,
what's the books?
Similar to what Katie had talked about.
Okay,
In the publishing world,
right,
there aren't classifications
right.
until there's youth, and then there's what's called young adult. So young adult is not something we are choosing. We're not saying this is a young adult book, this is not a young adult book.
Right.
Young adult is determined by the publisher, similar to what we talked about with committees. What doesn't exist is that same ranking for anything below those young adults.
Right. I just want to wrap it up, and
Yes.
maybe I asked Scott if we follow procedures. He seemed to think we did. I can appreciate where you're coming from, Terry. All we do is talk about mental health constantly and how our kids are anxious, and anybody can check this out, and parent doesn't know until it's in their backpack. And I didn't have a problem with 3 and 4. You talked me into that. I was good with that. I didn't have a problem with that because that's the guideline for the American Library Association. So my decision was solely based on experts because this and the bloody hand, if a 6-year-old can read it on the bus before their parents get it to it, the American Library Association said it's not appropriate. I mean, I wouldn't have slept for a week. So I'm just hung up on that. I think we're not censoring it because we're following the age guidelines. It's still available. It's not out of the library.
But that's the point. We're saying you have to jump in where the system is designed to say you can opt out. We can't tell, we have no legal basis to tell one parent, your kid can't read this unless you say they can, versus because I've decided that nobody should read it.
Well, she
Well, wait a
was
minute.
okay with
It's
paranormal.
not-
It's only these 2 titles, which is the same.
But
with
that's
like
not how
Envelope
the-
with
It's
Ghosts.
not our legal responsibility to make every book in the world available in the library.
Nobody said that, Chris.
We pick and choose. I think, yes, librarians are experts at libraries and whatnot, but parents are experts at parents. And what I'm hearing from the parents on the board is this doesn't look like it's something that we should expose.
So just so you're aware of this decision does not mean that a first grader cannot check that book out.
Right.
But he's got to
It's a
permission.
Didn't you just
it's a
say-
recommendation
Wait,
It
repeat
was
what
a-
you just said.
that a first grader cannot check that book out. It's,
He
it's,
can
it's,
with
it-
parental.
it's a recommendation.
Okay, so when we decided from committee that it was appropriate for grades 3 and 4, like the
That's-
ALA said, how
Following this guideline here, when the student goes to check something out, and it's now considered to be something appropriate for grades 3 and 4,
yeah.
the way I interpret this is that they're going to steer them away from it. All right? But it's not going to be a case of where they absolutely positively
Well,
can't
the-
check it
The way
out.
I'm reading the motion is, we would say by motion, it's not available until
See,
Thursday.
I thought,
Unless, well, it,
Unless parental permission.
So
a
will
little
our
bit,
system
we're
accept parental
splitting hairs here a little
permission?
bit,
Yeah,
you know?
I agree.
And,
We currently have the option to, if you look at the second grade on that guide, if you look at the middle school in that guide, there is the possibility that parents can tell their fifth graders that they would like to have access to young adult books.
So how will we inform all of our parents of this now need to opt in?
For 2 books.
it's just
For
these
2 books.
It's just these.
So
And when will the next set of books come? Because
Right, when
if
does it
you're
stop?
reading horror genre or paranormal genre, you better be expecting pictures of dead people and blood. It is
Mandy,
part
did
of
you
the
read-
process.
did you read
We're
this?
getting beyond
And I
this.
tell you, my son would
well,
bring it home.
no,
But
we're not,
what
Chris.
about your
We're
daughter?
not, Chris, because
Huh?
what
What
we're
about
doing
your
here
daughter?
Talking
is-
about
My
these
daughter?
two
Yeah.
books.
Well, so we're,
I mean, if
we're
you-
also setting a possible precedence here to deal book by book by book. And that is
We
not.
have that
the-
already in policy.
No,
anybody-
Terry
any-
read it, Terry read it in the
But
policy.
any citizen can fill out the form, can go to the principal and say, I don't think this is appropriate to be on there, and receive that hearing. That's something that's already in our policy.
Right, but again, as far
They
as,
could
as far as
potentially-
how we view it as a committee and as a board, based upon our policy, we're looking at it on a whole as like a genre.
Well,
I
see,
mean,
and
again-
I didn't take it that way because I mentioned I was okay with that ghost book
Well,
actually for a long time.
Okay, let me give you an example. You decide to ban these 2 books.
for
Or
first and
limit
second
their,
graders.
limit
Yeah.
their
They're not
access.
banned.
No,
Well,
I'm restating it, Chris.
Yeah.
You decide to limit access. Okay, the next book that comes out of this genre is gonna have the same pictures, the same type of language. Where do you stop this
Well,
process?
Mark actually had suggested reviewing the whole series, like in one of our curriculum
Mm-hmm.
meetings, which
That was the last
Well,
one.
So
that- it
are
was-
we now
it was-
gonna eliminate the whole
I think
series from
this-
being
I
accessible?
think this gives
Can-
guidance, if we act, it gives guidance
Can I-
to the.
yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say something. So, with little ones being at home, I want you to just paint the picture here. I want you to think of your daughter or your son that's 5 years old, or 6 years old, or 7 years old, and I want you to just start reading this book to your kid. And I just take yourself there. Where do these dangling feet come from? Some say they belong to the ghosts of teenagers who hanged themselves decades ago.
But you know what?
How do you...
But your mistake you just made there, you didn't read the book before you read it to your kids.
I
So
am
if you just-
trusting
if you
that
just-
my
if
school...
you just opened up the book and started reading it, and that's exactly what I was interpreting what happened in this household. Now, I could be totally wrong. But I think part of your parental responsibility is to look at the book first.
But
and
how
then-
many parents don't get that option, either because of work schedule or
The book they could have read on the bus on the way home. I mean,
there's
They-
nothing
they-
Yeah.
there's nothing stopping
I'm
that.
gonna-
I just
I'm gonna call the question, if there's a way you can overrule me on that, if you wanna have a vote on
Well,
calling the
I
question.
think,
but
I think
I'm
we
gonna call
need,
the question.
go
Can I
ahead,
just
please.
one issue that I think is the issue is since 2019, we have been asking to separate the use of library materials from our selection of curriculum. Because right now, library materials and curriculum are threaded through. We've been asking, we have a draft, it hasn't made it to policy because it was supposed to go before COVID hit. And then other priorities came up and so it hasn't. We have a drafted new process. The other feel that I heard through this entire thing is that the process falls off in your own policy because it says once it reaches the appeal, the whole process dissolves and says the school board will decide what to do at the appeal. Where every other step of the appeal said this people has to be there, this material has to be there, we have to make sure everybody has a copy of that, they read the entirety, there's all these checklists that have to be met. And then when it gets to the appeal process, it says the board will decide what to do with appeal. And that's when you decided to take it to instructional committee, right? But there's nothing else that says what has to happen.
Yes, there is. There's a process for that in,
Okay,
there is a process for that. It is defined on page 55, item E, of what is our administrative guidelines
of the curriculum selection.
for selection of educational materials.
Right, but that's curriculum.
Educational materials are identified as library, curriculum, or others. It is not limited to library or to curriculum.
So a
So in
request
what-
I would make of the policy committee is that immediately you move this up to the top of the order and you develop a separate policy just for library material items. That was the recommendation that I got when I was at the state board, state school board convention, was that that's the first thing you should do. If you don't have it, you gotta separate the two out because there's two different sets of guidelines and rules. If it's something that's gonna be in the classroom or it's tied to the curriculum versus something that's gonna be in the library, so.
Well, I'm gonna try again. I'm gonna call the question.
I'll second that.
Okay, hold on. Oh, sorry.
Is there any dissent about calling the question?
What is the
I-
question again,
I was
please?
gonna make a
The
motion.
question is the motion that
Okay, we
was
gotta finish
made
that
by, I forget,
Mandy,
Mandy, seconded by Holly. Can you read it back?
to approve the findings of the instructional committee for reconsideration of school library resources as presented.
Yeah, as presented.
Which would mean we would limit these books to, these two books to 3, 4, correct?
Call, yes.
Anything above third
Calling
grade,
the
correct?
question means
Third and fourth.
we'll vote right away, and we should
But
probably
it'd be third
divide
and
the
above,
house and
right?
vote on
Yes.
on the voice
Well, there's
vote.
only 2 grades in
Right.
that.
Just to be sure,
What's the question we had?
That these
it's
two
to
books would
agree
be
with
3 and
the
up.
original findings
Third
of the
and up.
curriculum.
Yeah, basically
Okay,
what we
but if I
recommended.
vote that way,
You
or
vote
no,
yes.
because Mark already, I wanna go back to his original motion.
Mine got voted down.
You got voted down.
Voted down, so right now it's
So
not.
could
it's
I
not
make
going
a
to-
third motion
Not yet.
pending legal review? No, okay,
You can amend
okay,
that,
got it, I got it.
but we can have it legally reviewed whether we pass it or not. So,
But you, sounds like you would like to have it reviewed before we take this vote that's on the table right now.
Well, but we have to finish this one, is what I'm saying.
Let's go
Right?
ahead.
And then I'll make a motion to amend.
Well, no,
No,
the
you can
motion
amend-
to
You
can amend it right
motion
now.
Before we vote on the motion, if
Yeah.
you're
Like to
interested
amend
in
the motion,
amending.
yeah, add an amendment to that, we'll vote on that, and then we'll come back to the full motion if it passes.
So I have to start a new motion before
No,
we vote on the
it's-
first one?
You're gonna amend this
You're-
one.
If
That's what I thought.
if you desire, you can
Yes.
amend, you can make a motion to amend. And hearing none, I guess, we will proceed to vote.
Holly Schweitzer,
Can you repeat that?
Okay,
Sorry.
it's a
I
motion
was listening
to,
to.
support the original action of the instructional committee to limit the books, these two books,
These 2 books.
from second grade on down and for third grade on up.
It's just these two books.
If
Yes.
I paraphrase that, Rick.
yes?
Yes.
Terry Wagner,
No.
Mandy Wills.
No.
Katie Batten,
Yes.
Mark Grossman,
No,
John Heidemann,
Yes.
Chris Martenson.
I'm a yes. So that motion carries, and you can certainly refer it to, we certainly could be referred to it. But we don't have to deal with that right now.
no.
I think you have to reread that. I'm not sure you could restate them after we remove them. The board's motion, you cannot come back, I don't believe.
Not in the same meeting.
I'm not sure that's the way it reads. once a decision has been made, it can't be appealed back.
There's no
Yeah.
appeal of the veto.
Right, so once a decision is made by the board on the.
On these
that's
two
final.
books.
That's the final.
You can't
the
come
way our
back.
current policy reads.
So
Okay,
if legal tells us we broke the law, guess what? We'll be sued.
So what if the,
well,
I'm not
we
gonna
can-
ask the question.
motions can be rescinded if that was said.
I think you need to read that, Chris, because I'm pretty sure it reads that once this decision has been made by the board, there is no appeal to reverse it. Am I correct
But
in
there
that,
is,
Scott?
we are under Robert's rules with that does. give
That's
us
how the policy curve reads, once the
That-
final,
that-
final decision.
Yeah, final decision.
But policy overrides Robert rules, Chris. That's what guides us. I think we've made that.
We will move to item C, review and potential approval of the super sub pay rate by Scott Black, and Mr. Marquardt will present that.
So at our recent compensation committee meeting on February 6th, Mr. Marquardt and I addressed the committee on sub-rate and current pay. And as we know that acquiring subs is a constant challenge, and we're very proud of the subs that are supporting our district. And as we get into the spring semester here and all the things that go with our spring semester, from field trips, co-curricular events, and the need for continued subs, we are recommending to the compensation committee to bring forward for consideration the acknowledgement of our daily sub rate pay from $131 to $170 for individuals that have supported our district and 50 days of work or more. All right, it would not be retroactive, it would go into place if the board deems appropriate, that individuals that have made that commitment to us would continue on, and they'd be recognized at the 170 rate versus the 131. Are there any other questions that came up?
So if you had a long-term sub request for 45 days, and then that person didn't sub the rest of the year, that 45-day period, they would get regular sub pay even though they made a long-term.
They would be at the long-term sub pay because they've gone more than 10 days, I believe it is, to support.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it
just
has to be
to,
of the same position.
Of the same
From the
position,
same
in the
position,
same
it
classroom.
goes up then?
Same
Okay.
example,
just to
like
keep
maternity
us
leave.
back on Robert's
Good.
rules, I'll entertain a motion on that, and then we can open up discussion and
Okay.
questions about it.
I'll make that motion.
Randy has moved, and
Oh, second up.
seconded by Katie. Now we're open for discussion on super sub.
Okay, Scott, if you could speak to this, the difference between the long-term sub rate and the super sub rate and the base sub rate. Just so
the
everybody
base rate
understands.
is 131.
Yes.
Okay, the recommended increased rate for, we're calling them super subs because they've given us 50 days or more, is at 170. And that long-term rate is at 200, I believe? 209 for somebody that puts 10 days in a row in the same classroom. Say a person that might be out on maternity or paternity leave, so they're going into a classroom. They are instructing, they are the curricular leader of that class for anywhere from a few weeks to several weeks during that time where we have known planned absences.
So the main difference between the super sub and the long-term rate is the super sub is doing different jobs.
They could be in
Correct.
like every day. They could be
And
in
right
different-
now, if they're doing 50 or 100 days, they're getting 131. So we're proposing to try to make it more attractive to keep coming here.
Correct.
Is there a limit on days they can sub?
Only their own. So
What about if they're retired teachers?
then some of them have restrictions based on.
They'll limit themselves, they're only supposed to work 800 hours
So
nowadays.
90 days roughly.
So, Mrs. Siebert, do you see this as helpful to keeping a full roster of subs?
Absolutely. We have some subs that are willing to flex into just about any position, willing to move from this, that, and the other. We've had a few handfuls teacher or staff that's looking for that flexibility.
Any other questions on it? If not, I think we're ready to vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no.
That needs a roll call.
Oh, it needs a roll call because we're spending money. Forgot.
Terry Wagner,
Yes.
Mandy Wills.
Yes.
Katie Batten.
Yes.
Mark Grossman,
Yes.
John Heidemann.
Yes.
Holly Schweitzer.
Yes.
Chris Martenson.
Yes. Thanks for reminding me, Terry. The rookie.
So on the thing.
Yeah, okay. It helps if I look down here. All right, review and potential approval for board candidate forum. I'll turn that over to Mr. Whit.
So board members, last year, if you remember, we had a board candidate forum for our incumbents and our challengers. Prior to the primary, we had 5 individuals interested in 2 positions, and they had to bring that down to 4 for the April election. Interest has come forward, and Chris and I have chatted, and Chris and John are both incumbents this year as in this process. Is it the desire of the board to mimic something similar in nature to what happened or what took place last year with an opportunity for board candidate forum? And if so, the ability to bring it forward in a similar way as to last year if that met the mark?
Do we have to have a motion? You got it on there as motion to support.
Yeah, I have told Scott that I'm not going to give an opinion one way or the other because I'm affected by it, so I will happily
Defer.
participate. I'll happily go along with the decision not to do it.
I'll make that motion to have a school board candidate forum.
I'll second that.
Any discussion on it?
Yeah, I'd like to make an amendment to that, if I would. And that,
You can.
because there is always going to be an opportunity for possible political influence amongst the board, whether we do this next year or this year and so forth. Given the fact that, we've done it once, it seemed to be very successful, well received and so forth. I think this should be wholly at the discretion of our district administrator. And the reason I say that way there's no chance for any type of political influence on board members' part as to whether this happens or
Or
not.
can we just say it
Does this
should
make
happen
sense?
every
Should
year?
that be part of the annual?
It should be part of the
development?
annual plan.
Yeah,
Unless there's
yeah,
just 2 people?
yeah,
That's
Yeah.
what I say.
and that way it's just,
I
it's
say
just,
it's
it's just
helpful for,
there.
I think, everybody. I like
I
could we
agree.
do the opposite of what you're saying and just say in perpetuity we add it to the calendar because it's helpful?
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
So,
So I've heard 2 different things here.
Yeah, we do. That's why I asked
yeah,
how we go about doing
Well,
that.
you can ask Terry if he considers that a friendly amendment. We don't need to vote on the amendment if that's the case, if he wants to make that.
Is that friendly? Did I give you flowers?
What is the amendment?
The amendment is that this item, this school board candidate forum, just become a part of our school calendar from here to until another board decides or
So,
another board decides.
If I were to phrase that the New London School District will sponsor school board candidate forums for every appropriate election.
School board election,
Yeah.
which is every year.
School board
There's
candidate
always-
forum.
There's
So-
always one every year.
And Scott had thrown out that because it wasn't, there was 4 people for 2 seats, but I could see, maybe you wanna know who's running and there's only 2
I
seats.
think even if you're
Yeah.
unopposed.
That's
Sure,
what I
have
mean,
an
that's what I'm
opportunity.
saying,
Right.
that's what I was saying.
It may change the
Right.
scope of what that
So
looks like, but.
I would receive that as a friendly
Yeah.
amendment to my motion.
I'll second
You
Mark's.
good with that?
You want to read the motion back?
Can I just ask one thing?
Yes.
Sure.
Yes.
What if we have no one running against incumbents?
Well,
That's
that
what we
you
were just
still.
saying.
I still think there's
There's
appropriate.
still enough,
Okay.
yeah, because you could
That's
have
all I wanted
write-in,
to know.
you could
Okay.
have a write-in.
Just one other question too, what if you have to have a primary, do you wanna do 2 forums, or?
Oh,
If we said for any
Just
school
one.
board election,
just one.
then, well, then it would be available for both.
Because last year we just did one with a primary.
Then maybe you just do it sooner, because it's hard to schedule it that many times and find a moderator. Maybe just do it for the primary then.
The answer shouldn't change before or after. the
Right.
primary.
Right.
So if there is a need for a primary, it would be prior to the primary, and if it's 4 or less, well, then it would be prior to the April election.
I think anything we can do to provide the community an
Transparency,
opportunity
yeah.
to hear what candidates are saying, we should do it, whether we do it for, have to do it for a primary and an election, or just an election one year. They're making decisions about
Yeah.
a board that controls a lot of, in our area, a lot of money, as well as makes some very serious decisions.
I don't disagree with you at all. I think it was a scheduling kind of a pain, right? To find
I'm sorry,
another
Mandy.
date and find your moderator and,
It can be.
you know. I mean, we could
There's
start
a
with
lot
one.
going on, especially when there's a primary.
We could
So to
start- I mean,
squeeze
we
two
could
of them
start
in,
with the
it's a
one and
lot.
the date's flexible,
Okay.
All right.
or maybe we add one.
Any other discussion?
Would you read the motion, Jill, please? As best you could have heard
To
it.
sponsor a school board candidate forum for every school board election,
A
or
motion, because the amendment was incorporated into the
Yeah.
motion
the
already.
original motion was to support a school board candidate forum opportunity prior to the 2023 spring election. So you're amending it to have it
Be an
every
annual,
Annual.
be an annually,
Annual.
annual event
Annual.
on the school calendar, or not on the school calendar,
And
right?
that
Sponsor
would just be
annual?
incorporated because it was an amendment we had to vote on, because Terry accepted it. By Robert's
So
rules, he-
Terry, are you okay with just one form, whether there's a primary, if there is indeed a primary?
I would prefer two, but I'll take one if that's all we can gather.
You're gonna take one.
That wasn't my
Joan, I
question.
think we're gonna make it.
Look at the way she
There was
pointed
no
at you.
flowers there, Terry.
I mean, couldn't a board say, hey, we're having a primary, can we add one this year?
Well,
They could.
they could always add it, you know, there's nothing that's in the motion that says you can't do one, right?
I just,
At
as
least
a
one.
minimum, you
At
know,
least
we will
one.
have a forum.
A forum.
There we go. Yeah, that's good.
At least one.
to
Yeah.
sponsor at least an annual school board candidate forum.
Perfect.
Correct.
So are we ready to vote on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I would like to register abstention just because I'm incumbent. All those opposed say no. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, we have then, review and approval, or no, Sugar Bush Elementary renovation project scope walkthrough.
So board members, why we're here tonight, to talk and have a walkthrough, Representative Dwayne from Somerville is present. He will take us through the building as Mr. Marquardt and I have been sharing and Kristen Grable, our elementary principal, have been sharing the scope of prospective work. Tonight's purpose is to take a tour around the building and check out the potential areas and where the potential motion that will be coming following our walkthrough to support renovations here at Sugar Bush Elementary. Dwayne, ready?
We'll reconvene for the final item on the agenda. Review and potential approval of the Sugar Bush Elementary remodel projects.
Mr. Marquardt?
Okay. The topic summary notes that our facilities committee met and reviewed the bids and additional items for project scope on February 1st. I also had a few other updates of just the process of getting to the numbers, but I really think that's the next part I wanted to talk about next in your packet. You have 2 pages. It had the bid tabs from the contractors themselves for the projects and all of the alternates. We were pleased that 5 firms submitted bids for the project. You can see that I summarized them by numerical order of the total bids. So what I wanted to do next is go to the second page, talk about the alternates. The base bid to complete the project would be $927,000. Alternate 1 is the restrooms, so that is the student boys and girls restrooms. We walked in there. That alternate would be $203,650. As we walked in there, Dwayne explained all of that will be replaced in there, from flooring to fixtures to the ceilings, adding ADA bathrooms, and updating the chase behind the walls, the drainages as well. Alternate 2 is the corridor benches. When we first walked out in the hallway, that's you saw the sample that Dwayne shared. That would be the benches throughout the building where the students sit and come in the morning or at recess or after school. That's where they're stacking their items. Alternate 3 is the library, and then those rooms back there, the carpet space. Alternate 4 and 5 are the blinds and window discussion. I wanted to provide a little bit more context from our facility committee meeting. We talked to the staff down at Reed Field for their feedback, because they do have windows with integral blinds, and they also have windows without integral blinds and blinds like that you see up there that are new, but because the windows were new, but we also put in new blinds, and their preference is the storefront windows. They felt like with the light that comes in, although it's nice to have the thumb turn, they felt like they had better control over the lighting in their room, and they felt like that would be the recommendation that they would share with the board to consider tonight. So just to give context a little bit more to that alternate, if we do choose alternate 5 of that $54,050, I spoke with Dwayne about the cost of adding blinds, and our rough estimate would be about $15,000 to add blinds to all the windows that are there. So you take that $54,000 and add the 15 to it. So a little bit less than the integral blinds windows, but we would definitely want blinds and not those ones, on the windows. We would want to have updated blinds. Below that, I also gave a few other items that would be a part of the total cost of the project. 1, the HVAC direct purchase was already approved by the board and action earlier this year. That's where we purchased it from Masters because of the timeline delays. Also, HVAC controls. Terry asked a great question before. Okay, how will we control the temperatures in the rooms? We would have thermostats. They would be connected to our Desigo system on a computer, so our maintenance team would be able to monitor temperatures in the buildings, this building remotely, either from their laptop or in the maintenance areas at the schools. Asbestos abatement, you did walk in a lot of the classrooms. We would have 9x9 tiles that need to be abated, and we would also do testing in the building as well to make sure that any other of the project work is being done, there's not asbestos containing materials. That again would be a bid out project where the board would have a chance to consider the bids that you would receive for that abatement, and that would happen during the summer. Asphalt work, we concluded our tour. Mrs. Grable was talking about that. We would design an RFP to send out to bidders to do asphalt updates to parts of the building. We likely would do it in 3 different packages, just so we have a good idea of the cost of each. So the playground area, this area, and then over by kind of the bus loop, just so it gave the board some options should the cost come back where you didn't feel like you wanted to approve the entire scope of work. We also do pay Somerville for their services. You heard that tonight in our vouchers. And we've budgeted contingency at our other projects to be sure that if something came up, we were able to pay for it. And often in our projects, we've used contingency to update some furniture in the building or something else that comes up during the project that the staff said, okay, I have this, could we get rid of it so we could get something updated and modernized. So it brings a group of totals down there between 1.8 million and 2.0 million, depending on probably the biggest alternate there is with the bathrooms. Does the committee who reviewed the bids and had a discussion have anything to add? We had Holly and John and Mark there last week, and Mr. Black was there as well.
I get why the staff would want the windows without the blinds in it, because I know like in our house, we face south, and when you have the blinds just open, it's still darker than as if you pull them up, and then you have total control. I wasn't thinking about that. We were talking about it at the committee meeting the other day, because I thought the in-window would be the hot ticket. But
You can't pull them up with the ones in refill? The-
No, you can open and shut them usually.
That's it? You can't?
No, there's
Just-
one in. You
Mine
can,
can go up, that's
you
why
can
I
open
was-
them and close them, but you
Yeah.
can't.
Half of the building, the
Lift
east
them.
side of the building has blinds similar to this.
Just
Okay.
to stay on proper procedure, I'll entertain a motion to approve the proposal that Mr. Markort has put in front of us. And
I'll
then we
make the
can-
motion.
John?
Just a quick question is, our motion is to approve 1.258 million. Is that what we're bidding on this evening?
I think we're,
Plus your 4 alternates.
I mean, John can make whatever
Well, they're-
motion he
they're in
would
there.
like, but I guess I was thinking, make a motion for the proposal that Joe has done for the,
Yeah, I'm
up to 2
making,
million.
I'm making a proposal so it works. not
So
the-
project total cost, is that correct, John?
Do you want Joe to repeat that one?
Project total cost?
It's a range of 1,860,083 to 2,063,733.
Yes. Yes, the total cost on that one.
The total cost, okay. Is there a second to John's motion?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Mandy. Now we're open for discussion. The motion is to approve all the contingencies with the recommended contractor that is presented, IEI.
Or just a point of clarification. Our motion and our proposal tonight was to approve potential approval of Sugar Bush Elementary model bids. So can we actually take up the whole thing tonight? Or do we simply bid on IEI's bid proposal?
The bids were part of the proposal from the individual contractors. The HVAC through asphalt, HVAC has been paid out. The controls, the asbestos abatement, and the asphalt work, they still need to be bid out accordingly. Right? So this is a project scope.
Well, I guess that's my question. Our agenda says we're taking up, selecting a contractor and approving that bid, which is, if I read this correctly, tell me if I'm not, IEI is bidding at 1.258. Is that what we're, because if that's our agenda, then that's what we can bid on tonight, or approve tonight, I believe.
I didn't hear what John said, but I think he was saying to approve the base bid and the alternates from IEI. Is
Yes.
that- Yes.
Yeah, and
No,
it's-
John said to take up the 2.64 million.
Nope, 6.3.
and actually,
But
our,
that's-
Well, I rolled it
But
up.
then there's unknowns in there. We don't know what the asbestos is.
I guess I'm
Yeah.
just trying to follow our agenda and what it says we're going to take up tonight. It doesn't speak to the whole project. It says we're to approve IEI bid or accept IEI's bid.
it says estimated amount in the agenda of 2,063,733.
No. If you read our agenda, Chris,
Yeah.
it says to, and I'm not trying to be a stickler here, I'm just trying to make sure we don't get in trouble. Review and potentially approve of Sugar Bush Elementary remodel bids, which the proposal is to accept the bid from IEI, correct?
Our proposed motion is to approve the project bids and preliminary intent to award a contract with IEI for Sugar Bush Elementary remodel as presented.
So we'd have to, we're bidding really on IEI's proposal tonight.
Yeah, but we're also saying in the topic summary that we're giving an estimate of the total project.
I know, but we can't,
We can't
This is
approve-
what we can-
can't approve
this
that
is what we
tonight
can take
because
on
it doesn't
tonight.
state that in our proposed motion. And, I mean, that work, like the asphalt work, the
I'm not
asbestos
objecting,
abatement and
Chris,
that.
to the total. I'm
We're
just
gonna
saying,
be able to approve that at a later date and still
Right.
get that work done with everything. I mean, if we, at our next meeting, we
we
put
can
it on
approve
there.
the total cost
Well,
of
is
the
it
project.
your
Well,
intent to come back with exact bids on the?
You're kind of getting into semantics because the minute we approve the 1.257, that kicks in these parts that are attached to it, the 270 that are going on the HVAC, another 160 on control work. The asbestos abatement, we included that fluctuating number because we don't know until we tear up the floor that we're standing on what we're gonna run into.
Well, you understand,
I mean, I get what you're
I don't think
saying,
there's a
but-
difference of opinion. I think, we're approving the base bid and we're,
If you want me to restate my motion, I'll make the motion, we move ahead with the bid of IEI. The minute we do that, all these other things kick in automatically.
Yeah,
At
I'm
our next
not
meeting.
Kind of a,
arguing
Have
the
those other
dollars
things
on there.
yeah.
All I'm saying is what we said to the public we would do tonight, and what's on our agenda is to approve IEI.
So like in 2 weeks at our next meeting,
We
we
can
can add
take
the
it.
other things on
I-
there.
I
that
fully
we're-
We
understand
can,
we're gonna do the
but
rest.
that's not really being wholesome and pure to the public either, because the minute we approve that bid, we're already kicking in hundreds of thousands of dollars more anyways, so we can do it that way, but
But
it's just as unwholesome as saying that we're approving the whole works, because in essence, we're approving the whole works.
But you can't say we're gonna deal with IEI and then approve things beyond that bid. I don't believe.
That's fine, I'll make the motion, I'll rephrase or reframe my motion to, we approve IEI at the $1,257,000, $670 amount. Anybody second that one?
I'll second it.
I'll second.
and we'll have, any further discussion?
I do have one thing, just to clarify the number. The number would be 1,225,770 because when we did the topic summary last week, it was before we had the discussion about the integral blinds. So when you subtract that 1.257, you gotta subtract alternate 4, add 5, so it changes the number.
Okay.
So this doesn't affect, the fact that we're not approving yet the amount of the other things isn't gonna slow you down, okay? Just wanted to
That's
make
what I
sure.
was kind of figuring, they'll,
All right, any further discussion? We'll have a roll call vote on this.
Mandy Wills,
Yes.
Katie Batten,
Yes.
Mark Grossman,
yes.
John Heidemann.
Yes.
Chris Martenson,
Yes.
Terry Wagner,
Yes.
Holly Schweitzer.
Yes.
Yes. And that concludes the agenda items for new business. We're now ready to go into closed session. Pursuant to section 19.85 1C Wisconsin statutes, the Board of Education will convene in closed session to discuss the employment, to discuss the evaluation of district administrator over which the board has jurisdiction and exercises responsibility. Can I hear a motion to go into closed session?
I'll make that motion.
Moved by Holly,
I'll second.
seconded by Mandy. All in favor say, oh, is it, this,
Katie Batten,
Yes.
Mark Grossman.
Yes.
John Heidemann,
Yes.
Holly Schweitzer,
Yes.
Terry Wagner,
Yes.
Mandy Wills.
Yes.
Chris Martenson.
yes.
8:04.
Okay. All right, where are we gonna